So one of the most interesting things we've heard from clients actually in the last 5 years, maybe let's say 3 years, is we used to see clients thinking about the world from a core satellite approach, right? You build your global allocation, then you satellite into things that you like on top of that. So this was a shift away from a regional asset allocation. I got my US exposure, my Europe exposure, and my Asia exposure.
Interesting.
We're actually, I think, reverting back to the geographical type of model now. I've been hearing that a lot from clients since the election. The speed at which Europe managed to mobilize, 650, 800 billion euros to invest in, the reindustrialization through the defense industry in Europe is phenomenal. And so I think you get these regional hubs that over the last decade haven't looked like much was happening there, in particular Europe and Middle East. But I think you probably see those emerge in more meaningful way. We've been very closely following the Mistral in Mistral AI in France, the open source foundational model. They've done a partnership with one of the big defense tech startups in Europe, which is I can't remember the name. It's not with H. Maybe somebody knows, but they're backed by General Catalyst and Saab.
Okay.
It might come to me.
Yeah, no worries.
We think these kind of, you're going to see the emergence, I think, of maybe it's Paris, maybe it's Berlin, in the Middle East, maybe it's Abu Dhabi, in India, it's going to be, there was a panel on it, before, which I thought was interesting. And then, of course, you got China and the US. But I think this idea of, these regions wanting to build these hubs domestically for reasons of strategic importance. These are going to be deemed, whether it's AI, whether it's defense tech, whether it's robotics, blockchain, these things are going to be deemed to be a matter of national security. And I think they already are. And I think that's where we're heading. And so you'll see these kind of pockets emerging. Europe's not going to want to use Chinese open source model because you're giving your data away to the CCP. And in the US, you've got closed source, and that's scalable to the extent that people trust those companies. And I don't know how many people in this room, trust those foundational model companies. Maybe you are happier with a more of an open source ecosystem. And so I think it's going to be really interesting to see how open source and closed source do, on the one hand, but I also think these regional champions are going to sort of emerge over time, and that's going to force the creation of these hubs.